That night, Sergei returned to the station again. Curiosity drove him back to the old, nearly collapsed building.
Who are you looking for, Tuan Munir?
You seem anxiously waiting for someone. A fat, unattractive man suddenly appeared behind him. His round face was covered in pockmarks from chronic acne. He was estimated to be in his early 30s. A girl. She said she wanted to wait for me here, Sergei lied. He was already wary, not wanting to be greeted too familiarly by a stranger in Indonesia. Many men in their 20s and 30s disguise themselves as guides, but are actually brokers. Brokers in Indonesia are said to be far more terrifying than the Italian mafia. They will pursue you relentlessly until your mission is complete. Especially in Cirebon. The fat man laughed loudly. His laughter echoed like the sound of a kentrung, a traditional Chinese gong. The drums pounded deafeningly. However, Sergei restrained himself, doing his best not to comment on how deaf his ears were to the man's laughter. Mr. Munir, this is funny. What girl comes back and forth here at 11 o'clock, almost midnight? I met her here yesterday, 2 in the morning. A tall, slender, long-haired girl in her 20s, very attractive, wearing traditional Sundanese clothing. She smelled like frangipani, you know, the flower Balinese girls wear in their traditional ceremonies. Siti Zainab? The stocky man laughed again. That's my friend. She usually stays up every 2 in the morning. She hasn't come yet, busy singing traditional Sundanese songs. Then let me wait here. Sergei sat on the cold station floor, stretching his legs out straight as he stared at the expanse of sky above the station building. The sky, which usually looks pitch black, changed color that night, resembling blood red, as if it were a sure sign that something was about to happen. The station's scent was so fragrant it pierced the nose, as if a garden of flowers had been sprinkled all over it. It was a blend of cantil, jasmine, red roses, white roses, ylang-ylang tuberose, and Gambier jasmine. Occasionally, a whiff of corpses and the stench of blood wafted through the garden's fragrances. However, Sergei, smitten with love, seemed oblivious to the strangeness. Hey, Tuan Munir, do you know the meaning of the frangipani flower in Java? Unlike Balinese girls who usually worship frangipani as a medium for offerings. Here. Kentrung Def. Stop your late-night chatter. A girl's boisterous voice broke the silence. Her voice was in a highly swooning alto, making Sergei's heart race and become increasingly erratic. Before he knew it, time had passed. The clock on the station wall showed exactly 2 in the morning. Siti Zainab, I thought you were crushed to death by a train. Zainab laughed softly. If I had died, it would probably have been at the hands of your ancestors. Do you still hold a grudge against the Dutch for colonizing Indonesia? Zainab didn't answer. Her gaze was blank. She simply sat there, stretching her legs beside Sergei on the rough, nearly bone-chilling tiles of the station floor. Even though she was wearing traditional clothing, she didn't seem the slightest bit troubled by it. I hold a grudge against Anchor, your family name. This time it was Sergei who laughed. He playfully ruffled Zainab's hair, causing the small curls to fall loose. You have a sense of humor, Zainab. If you meet any of my family, I'll tell them about your grudge. The sound of a passing train warning filled the biting night air. It was 2:30 in the morning. Sergei was joking around with Zainab until he lost track of time. He tickled her waist completely out of mischief. The girl was whimpering and begging for forgiveness. Before suddenly, Sergei froze, alert to the change in nature around him. What's wrong, Sergei? You seem tense. The sound of a train on track 2. Somehow I have a bad feeling, Sergei muttered. In the distance, the sound of a car horn honking repeatedly could be heard, along with disco music blaring all around. Do you hear that, Zainab? Hear what? Zainab was suddenly behind Sergei's back. She reached out with 2 fingers to touch his ear. You're listening too much. Just listen to my voice. Sergei remained motionless. His body relaxed under her touch. It warmed him and filled him with an inexplicable warmth, even though the woman's frangipani-scented fingers were cold as frozen ice. Ting! Ting! The sound of the barrier warning of an approaching train filled the air again. Sergei hadn't known that such a warning still applied at crossings without barriers. The voice sounded faint, drowned out by the sound of the kentrung. The drums were pounding. The sound was deafening. Tak-dung, tak-dung. Zainab, I have to go. Sergei suddenly stood up, staggering. His body swayed slightly as he hurried down the station floor. He ignored Zainab's screams behind him, holding him back. He had a very uneasy feeling. Ting! Ting! Sergei felt strange when the train warning sound hadn't stopped for several minutes. Now his footsteps had completely stopped at the railroad crossing where the accident had occurred a few days ago. A red car was speeding past, seemingly ignoring the warning sound. The car showed no signs of braking at all. Hey, stop, stop! There's a train? Sergei's panicked voice was drowned out by the strong night wind that early morning. Furthermore, from inside the car came the sound of a song that sounded... The music was incredibly loud, like disco music played in nightclubs. Perhaps the car owner didn't hear Sergei's screams, mixed with the gusts of wind. Tag-dung, tag-dung. From a distance, he saw Kentrung Budeg standing near the railroad crossing, playing the kentrung. The rhythm was very lively, as if a drum band was about to perform in the early hours of the morning. Sergei stared incredulously at Kentrung Budeg's unusual habit. It's rare for someone to play the kentrung in the dead of night just to practice music, especially in an unfamiliar area, unless it sounded as a warning. However, judging by Kentrung Budeg's incredibly happy expression as he played, it was unlikely he intended to use the sound of the kentrung as a warning. It all happened so fast. Sergei didn't even have time to take a breath when the fatal accident occurred. The car was stuck on the train tracks, unable to move forward or backward because his tires were crushed between the rails. Sergei ran to help. When he heard the sound of a train engine from the west, the sound was incredibly loud. Hey, get out! Leave your cars! He could only scream in panic. The Argo-Jati train continued its speed, crashing into cars a kilometer away. The cars were crumpled here and there. Sergei's heart echoed with the crumpling. His heart sank, having to watch this fatal accident with no way to help. Tag-dung, tag-dung. Kentrung Budeg kept beating its kentrung. Sergei, what are you doing here? Come on, let's go back to the station. Zainab arrived behind him, pulling his arm away. The night was still completely dark. Dawn was still a long way off. Only 1 or 2 people were running in shock toward the accident site. About 5 people died on the spot. Their bodies were mangled. It's hard to recognize. Call the police immediately. Many of them are still stubborn when passing through this crossing. When told to honk, they turn on the music instead. Their car is red and they're wearing all red outfits too. Tag-dung, tag-dung. Kentrung Budeg pounded his percussion instrument even harder, leaving behind a sense of utter uncertainty. Sergei was surprised that, as loud and deaf as the kentrung sound was, the 2 people who witnessed the tragedy seemed oblivious to its presence. It was as if Kentrung Budeg was just an invisible entity trapped in their retinas. Hey, Sergei, when are you going to marry me? Are you going to take me to the Netherlands? That night was the umpteenth night after the fatal accident that killed 5 people. Track 2 was temporarily unusable. Yeah, later, Sergei lied. He had no intention of taking Zainab to the Netherlands. He wanted his illicit relationship with Zainab to end in Indonesia. In the Netherlands, he had a heart to protect. Zainab wiped the sweat that was pouring down her oval face before rising from the cold station floor. Behind the empty station pillars, they had finished sweating, experiencing their first night without the bonds of marriage. She leaned in, staring deeply into Sergei's eyes. Are you serious? I won't be lied to again by an anchor. Why don't you believe me? Tomorrow night I'll meet you here and invite you to come with me to the Netherlands. Zainab beamed. She then whistled loudly, as if signaling her friends to come. Congratulations, Zainab. A woman in a see-through white dress covered in smudges began the conversation. She arrived carrying a baby boy. A woman dressed all in black, holding 2 small children, joined in the congratulations in the background. She wore a large bull's horn-like accessory on her head. Sergei, this is all my family. This is Jurig Jarian, my aunt. This is Sandakala, my niece. Zainab introduced the newly arrived women. Sergei's gaze immediately shifted to the station entrance. There was another woman who, he looked drenched as if he'd been hit by a seasonal flood. He was busy spreading out a mat on the cold station terrace. His clothes looked strange, as if they were woven from a woven mat. Is that Lulan Samak, my cousin? Several other figures arrived next, dozens of them coming from who knows where. They seemed to be crowded together, filling the previously deserted station building. Some climbed the station pillars, setting up decorations with balloons and streamers. Others decorated the square, as if someone were to become a real bride that night. Others, especially small children and teenagers, simply jumped around as if delighted by the happy news. Tag dung, tag dung. The kentrung was played incessantly again that night. The kentrung budeg led the ceremony welcoming Sergei into Zainab's extended family, accompanied by other musical instruments, such as the flute and Sundanese gamelan. The sound of the flute, which usually sounded melodious throughout the country, sounded eerie this time. Brings the cold early morning air. The shivers grew even more intense. The thumping strains of Sundanese gamelan, music added to the mystical and magical atmosphere of the place. There were no further accidents that night. The night had been peaceful for some time, too quiet even for a silent station. However, for some reason, Sergei felt goosebumps. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end for the first time since he set foot in that unknown station.